All right. Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started today. So we'll start just with some brief introductions and then we'll get right into the webinar. But I'm Keely Hansen with SVA Consulting, and joining me today is Austin and Julia from our team as well. If it's your first time joining us in these webinars, welcome. And if you're returning, welcome back. Just a couple of items before we get started. As we go through today's webinar, please feel free to ask questions. You'll have that chat feature. We'll be monitoring that throughout, and then we'll also have a dedicated Q&A section at the end. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Today's webinar topic is about SVA's built vendor portal within Acumatica. So a little bit different than some of our other webinars where we typically focus on kind of the native Acumatica functionality. This particular webinar is going to focus more on some collateral that SVA Consulting specifically has built on top of Acumatica. And in this use case, we've essentially made the customer portal within Acumatica a vendor-facing portal. So we'll point out some of those differences. We'll show a little bit of what we built. We'll walk through the demo today, and then we'll also just talk through kind of the applications that some of the customizations we've shown today can have in other areas within the software as well. All right, so let me hop into it. Like I said, we'll just start again focusing on the vendor portal. We'll talk a little bit about the capabilities, kind of why we started to build it out, and what those benefits are as well. Then we'll get into the live demo. Julie and I will kind of role play back and forth the role of a buyer and a vendor and how we can kind of make that process a bit smoother with the portal as well. And then we'll get into the wrap up, just some Q&A at the end and some next steps as well. All right, so just kicking us off, a little bit about kind of what was the pain, what were we hearing from customers, and what drove us to start to build out this vendor-facing portal. As probably a lot of you are used to, more of a traditional purchasing process. So depending on kind of the complexities within that process, there can be quite a bit of back and forth between vendors and buyers. So kind of in a traditional flow, the purchase order gets emailed out to a vendor. They may respond via email, say, hey, we actually can't meet that date, or we don't have enough quantity in stock, so we're going to have to make some tweaks. As you can imagine, this can go on for a while. Sometimes those can get buried in inboxes. There could be multiple different versions of documents, purchase order documents, for example, limited visibility into status, as well as some manual follow-ups and phone calls. And I'll pause for a second there. It sounds like maybe there's an echo in the audio. Are you guys hearing an echo?
I will say on my end, I'm not hearing an echo.
Okay. Give me
If
the
any other
feedback.
attendees are hearing an echo, please post in the chat, and we will look into that further.
Okay. Yep. Let us know if I'm echoing on your guys' end. Okay. Awesome. I'll continue on. So in terms of kind of the results, as you can imagine, can lead to longer lead times, miscommunication between yourselves and the vendors, sometimes some lost information. We've all probably gotten some emails lost in the inbox before as well. Could potentially result in some discrepancies in terms of what you thought you were getting versus what you're receiving, and just a lot of administrative effort around that as well. So really, this is kind of the pain that we were hearing and why we decided to kind of build the vendor-facing portal for our customers as well. So flipping that into some of the benefits here. Just let me advance my slides. This kind of takes that and makes it a little bit smoother. So now with the vendor portal, you'll have real-time collaboration between yourselves and your vendors that you're working with. With that, there's going to be centralized communication. Obviously, they'll have self-service access. So instead of, prying them to get answers of, hey, can you deliver this on time? Can you deliver the quantity? All of those types of things, they'll be able to self-service a lot of those revisions or requests as well. With any sort of revisions from a purchasing perspective, you'll have full visibility into that history as well as an audit trail. And obviously this kind of leads to faster approvals and faster order confirmation kind of from both ends. All right, so just a little bit of an overview of some of the components that we have built out today, and then what you'll see in the demo. First is the ability for vendors to view and review. So they can view purchase orders, review them, make revisions and status updates. So all of those types of things are visible for them within the vendor-facing portal. They can collaborate, so they can share documents. They can share, notes, files, all of those types of things. We'll see that come into play today, as well as the activity side. And then they can start to respond. So that's really the action aspect of it of, hey, do we want to confirm that order? Does everything look good? Can we fulfill that request? Do we want to request certain changes or submit revisions? So we'll see that come into play as well. And then the tracking. You can kind of see the real-time updates, the revision history, the audit trail, all of those types of things. So kind of the full picture in terms of, we're seeing everything in a centralized spot as opposed to, just through people's phone calls and emails as well. All right, so a bit of background there. Again, we'll see it come into play. So now I'm going to transfer over to Acumatica. We'll show a little bit of the setup behind the scenes, and then Julie and I will get into the role of the buyer and the vendor. All right, so you should now all be seeing Acumatica. So within this screen, if you were on our previous customer portal webinar, it might be a little bit familiar. We're really using that as the basis. And then what our team did was essentially tweak this a bit with some of the customization to make it a vendor-facing portal. So just a couple of things to note here. Two specific areas that we'll see come into play today that we've added to the portal are the ability to have vendor purchase orders visible within the portal, and then something called a vendor hub. So we'll see that come into play, but the vendor hub is essentially kind of where the vendor is going to live to view any purchase orders that they have actions against, any historic purchase orders that they've already revised or confirmed, for example, as well as view specific types of documents as well. So we'll see that come into play, but essentially what we did here was use the customer portal as a basis, and then like I'd mentioned, kind of customize that to be vendor facing. So what I'll show here is I'll go to the vendor that we'll see within the demonstration today. We're going to be playing the role of the American Door and Glass vendor. So you'll see this is set up as a vendor within Acumatica. A couple of new components to point out. There's now this checkbox, which is essentially use the vendor portal. So you can determine on a vendor by vendor basis which vendors you actually want to be using the portal. Maybe it's just ones that you work with more frequently, for example, or you have more sophisticated purchase order needs, all of those types of things. You have full control over, which vendors are actually using the portal to start. And then the next one's going to be within a specific vendor record, individual contacts will essentially be the users within the portal. So within American Door and Glass, for example, maybe you just want John Jones to be a portal user, not necessarily Jarrett. So you also have full control over which specific users are working within the portal as well. And just to drill down into this one step further, for a little bit of the background, here's where I can say, okay, here's your access to the portal. And then you can have specific user roles built out as well. So I have a portal user. They're just going to access kind of the areas within the portal as well as the support cases. But these could be built out further as well. So as we go through the demo, for example, you want certain users to be working with purchase orders, but you don't want them to be working with vendor documents, for example. You can have certain types of user roles built out that restrict essentially what they can and can't do within the portal directly. All right, and then the last component that we'll see come into play, this is American Door and Glass. As we had mentioned, this vendor documents component is another component that we've essentially added on within Acumatica as well. And so now this is allowing you to track specific vendor documents or documents rather within the vendor. So if I just drill down into this one, here's where I can see, here's a document ID. So each individual document is going to have that unique ID. You can drill down into it. They'll have files associated with them. So you'll see as I play the role of the vendor, I'll actually be able to upload files, and then that could go through an approval process within the back end as well. Whether or not you want documents to be kind of internal that you're tracking against that vendor or external as well. So showing on that portal for the vendor to see. And then you'll have essentially different document types that you can configure within the system as well. So however you want to start to classify the different types of documents within the system, those can be set up, and then you can classify them by that document type. You'll have things like document revisions, like I mentioned, document approvals and activities. So just kind of taking a step above kind of the traditional file management a little bit further, and then displaying this on the portal as well. So we'll see that come into play. So just a little bit in terms of the setup in the background. So now I'm going to hand it over to Julia, and we're really going to get into the full purchasing flow. Julia is going to play the role of essentially a purchasing manager. So maybe the role some of you guys play today, and then I'll play the role as the vendor. So as I come back, you'll see me playing the role specifically as John Jones, the vendor. All right, I'll pass this over to you, Julia.
All right, thanks, Kaylee. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. All right, so as Kaylee already mentioned, I could be a purchasing manager right now, and I want to place that purchase order. So I'm gonna go ahead and we'll create a new purchase order for now for American Glass Door. So I'm gonna select my vendor here, and then I can already start adding the items I want to order. So maybe I just want to order some hinges and adding them. I'm adding my quantity. So familiar process here. Adding also a panel. Let's say 25 of these. All right. So far, so good. So now I can go ahead and save them as my purchase order. And when you can see here, now I'm going to remove that hold as you're probably used to. But now, as you can see, there's this new button popping up, Submit to Vendor. So this time, when I actually go ahead and click this, Kaylee will get a notification that I now submitted a purchase order, and then she can work on it, review it, revise it, or leave me notes if needed for it. So to see that real-time collaboration.
All right, perfect. So, as Julia mentioned, I could go ahead, receive a notification for this if I wanted to. So all of the functionality that exists in Acumatica would pick up on this flow as well. So business events, approval workflows, all of those types of things. But now I'm logged in as John Jones. So that was the vendor under that American Door and Glass, or that contact rather, under the American Door and Glass vendor. And so now I'm logged in and I have access to this vendor hub. So like I'd mentioned, this is essentially kind of the place that they'll stay from a vendor perspective to add documents, make certain revisions, confirm statuses, all of those types of things as well. And the way we have this set up currently is we have this tab for essentially pending orders. This is going to be anything where the vendor has action that's required. So Julia's job is done at this point. Now I need to go in and review the purchase order specifically. So I'll go ahead and drill down into that. We'll make some revisions. We'll see what that process looks like. But just to quickly walk through the other tabs here, I'll also have access into any historic purchase orders as well. So active orders, those are ones that are still open that my team's still probably working to fulfill. So I'll have visibility into that, the statuses, the dates that those are due, the promise on dates, all of those types of things as well. So these are ones that I probably already confirmed or revised, and those came back and were confirmed by the purchasing manager in this use case. And now my team has to work to fulfill those. So a full visibility into those active orders as well as pending ones that need my action. All right, so here's that purchase order that Julia just created. I'm going to go ahead and drill down into that. All right. So now I can see all of the details here. So I'll make this screen a little bit bigger, but now I can see, okay, here's the purchase order number. I can see the date and the promise on date, and then the details here are going to show me all of the different details related to that particular order. So I can see, okay, she's requesting 100 of these and 25. She's probably used to Amazon because she's requesting these to be fulfilled today. So I can go ahead and make some revisions as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this make revisions. If everything looked good and I just wanted to confirm it, that's what that confirm order button will be. And then as you'd imagine, that's going to have that open purchase order that then we'll go ahead and fulfill. But for now, I'm going to make some revisions. So I'm going to say, okay, we actually don't have 100 of these hinges in stock, but maybe we have, 80 of these. 25 is fine, so I'm not going to add a new order quantity there. We're just going to leave the original one. And anytime I'm making changes, I can go ahead and press save. And then I'm also going to update these to say, you know what, we can't actually fulfill by the end of the day. We're going to go ahead and have that promise on date be the end of the week. So I'll go ahead and update those as well. A couple of other components, if you wanted them to change the cost. So for example, hey, I only have 80 in stock. So I'm going to give them a discount because I feel bad or whatever the case may be. Or I could go ahead and update those unit costs as that vendor as well. And then they could go ahead and see that on their end. So I've updated the quantity to 80 here. I've updated both of those promise on dates for both items to the end of the week. And then I also have this revision note so that Julia can see, why did I make those changes? So I'll go ahead and add only have 80 in stock, can get you these by the end of the week. All right, so I'll go ahead and save those. And then as I'm making all the changes, I can see what my current revisions are. So now I have a revision ID. I'm changing these for the first time. And then I can see, all of those details as well. So now I'm requesting that we're revising this to 80, keeping the 25 of the other, and then those dates as well. So I'll have full visibility into, what I'm adding, the status of those. So they're still pending because Julia hasn't accepted these. The comment that I added. And then there's also going to be full control into, who reviewed those from the vendor side, when was it created, the date, all of those types of tracking histories as well. All right, so if this looks good, I'm going to press submit changes. And now you'll see that the status has changed to the buyer action. So now it's no longer in my queue, essentially as the vendor, and I don't have any action required here at this point, but now the buyer has action. So it's not going to be an active order until essentially in this flow, they go ahead and accept those changes and say, yep, we're fine with the 80 quantity. You can go ahead and fulfill. Before I go back into the other component here, or before I hand it over to Julia rather, there's going to be this documents area. So we took a look at that in the back end where you essentially can manage vendor documents. This is an area that we've put in the portal as well. So now as a portal user, I could go ahead and upload specific documents. So for example, maybe I need a certificate of insurance. That's something that Julia could have requested. That could have been a business event as well of, hey, anytime you add this in on a vendor record, send them a notification with a link to the portal to go ahead and add the actual document. But then here I could go ahead and upload files. So I'm going to go ahead, add that in. And now we can see just this vendor certification, a sample one that I can go ahead and add in. And so now we'll see that file attachment here, and then that can be visible to Julia as well. Maybe that goes through an approval process in the back end, whatever the case may be. In our case, it's pre-approved, but if it needed to go through that process, the typical approval workflow within Acumatica would exist there as well. All right, so my work's kind of done here. A couple of notes as well, things like cases, if you wanted that displayed via the portal, a vendor want to submit some sort of case. So maybe it's not exactly specific to, a purchase order, but they have requests for you in general. They could go ahead and add that in. All right, I'll stop sharing and I'll send it back over.
Yeah, we do
Go
have a
ahead.
few questions that I think might be appropriate to address before we hand it over to Julia. One of the attendees asked, will vendors be required to create a profile in Acumatica to use the portal as it's set up in this way?
Yeah, so the way it's set up right now is that you guys would essentially manage on your end which portal users or which vendor users have access to the portal. So those would need to be set up as contacts under the approval or under the vendor record within Acumatica. You guys would give them essentially usernames, and then whether that's a notification, an automated notification, for example, to have them essentially finish setting up their profile with setting their password and those types of things. That's kind of the flow today. So they wouldn't necessarily have like a self-service ability to create their own profile, but rather you guys manage that internally. And then from there, they'll have logins to the portal.
And then if you could speak to that a little bit more, Kaylee, a follow-up question from a different attendee was looking for confirmation that this system would send an email notification to the vendor, like let's say when either a profile has been set up for them or when a PO has been created, for instance.
Yeah, yep, exactly. So essentially what tool we would use there is the business events in Acumatica. So any sort of notification that we want to send to the vendor could be leveraging that business events tool. So whether it's, hey, we created a user for you, you need to finish setting up the account, or hey, there's a purchase order that's pending your approval, any of those types of notifications we could set up in the system. Those would go out to the vendor, and then they certainly could have a link to, the portal that they could log in as well.
Perfect. And then one additional question is, are you able to edit what the PO looks like before submitting it for a vendor?
Yeah. Are we talking about the PO document that would typically go out to them, or just what they can see? Oh, I
Uh,
think this might be it. When the PO is submitted to the vendor, is the PO report also submitted? It certainly could be. Yep. So we would just make that business event email notification set up that the attached report would be that standard purchase order document. Yeah.
Yep. And then one additional question that just came in, I think based on some of the further explanation you were providing when you were describing the setup process of adding vendors to the portal, Kaylee, is
Mhm.
would a separate role for vendors need to be created to ensure access rights are limited? So could you speak to that a little bit more in terms of those security roles and permissions?
Yep, certainly. So within that portal setup screen, you guys are going to dictate which essentially user roles you'll assign to users within the portal. So yeah, there's some out of the box ones. They're primarily on the customer facing portal side. So what we did is essentially add two of those user roles for the vendor specific access. But yes, you could have multiple different roles for those vendors to make sure they're only seeing exactly what you want them to see and editing only exactly what you want them to edit. So the full user role security would be wrapped into that and then applied to those particular users. All right.
Awesome.
Lots
Thank
of
you. I
good
think that
questions.
does-
Keep them coming. All right, I'll go ahead and pass it back to Julia so we can kind of put a wrapper on the flow. She'll see my changes that I just made as well.
Awesome. All right, let me share my screen here again. Okay. Just to orient ourselves a little bit again, so we're back here on my backend as the purchasing manager, and as you can see here, the status has changed. So now it's back to a buyer action requirement. Then I can go in here and see the changes that Kaylee made. So I'm going on my current revisions, and I can see, okay, here's the order quantity Kaylee updated versus the previous order quantity that I wanted to order. So I can go ahead now and accept the changes if I wanted to. Also, if I'm not happy with them or I think there need to be other changes, I could only accept one and go back and forth with Kaylee. But if I'm accepting them, I would be able to do that here. Set revisions. All right. So once I do that, it will automatically update my purchase order. So if I drill down back on my details tab, I can now see the order quantity change to 80, and for the panels, it's still 25 as she confirmed. And now if I would go back and forth or just to review all my revision changes, I could do this on this history revision change if needed. All right. That's basically all on my back end that I would have to do, and then I would be able to receive that new quantity that Kaylee entered in.
Perfect. Awesome. And like Julia said, we could go, maybe your guys isn't super straightforward of, hey, we request one revision and we accept it. Maybe it is, but to Julia's point, this could go on multiple different times and you'll see that revision ID on the far left-hand side. It's going to track all of those revisions. So, hey, we went from 100 to 80 and then 80 to 75, then 75 to 80, whatever the case may be. All of that back and forth will be tracked within the purchase order as well. So you'll have full visibility into that, what it was previously versus what it is being requested in that current revision as well. Awesome. All right, I'll go ahead and share out my screen here. All right. And it sounds like maybe we have one more question in the chat that we can answer as we're transitioning.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So this question is for revisions made to a PO and accepted, can the PO re-trigger an internal workflow approval process since the cost may have changed?
Yep, certainly. And that's a good call out. We should have addressed that. So yes, the typical purchase order workflow with the approval routing, that's going to remain in place. So if you guys have that set up today, you can keep that. You could also have a separate one set up for, hey, this went to the vendor portal and came back. So maybe it's routed to someone else. than your traditional purchase order approval workflow. But certainly that could go through that approval process before it gets kind of resent out to the vendor in that open status.
And one additional question, I think based on that, spawned another follow-up question. Can the vendor change the promised on date at the PO level versus having to change every line?
Yes. Let me verify that the vendor has access to. So I'll get back to you exactly on that one. That also leads a little bit into the next conversation of the customization aspect. So if there's areas within kind of the standard vendor portal that we had shown that you guys have specific use cases for, in this case, hey, we want to change it on the header level as opposed to the line level, or maybe there's additional areas that you want visibility into from a vendor perspective. Those are areas that we could tweak kind of what we've built a little bit more to your guys' specific use cases. So essentially what we showed was just, hey, here's what we have. It's kind of the standard vendor portal that we built for customers, but do have the ability to essentially add additional components to that or tweak it further depending on your guys' use cases. So let me check on that one. That might be built in already, but if it's not, that's certainly something that we have some latitude to adjust as well. Awesome. All right. So in terms of what you just saw, we had mentioned, obviously, that's kind of an SVA built component that we've added on to Acumatica. A couple of things that I wanted to call out just specific to what you've seen today, where we could start to apply this in other areas of the system as well. So we've done quite a few customizations for customers over the years. The vendor portal is kind of just one example of that we've seen be pretty successful with multiple different customers as well. But just some of the application components that you saw in that flow that could be applied to other areas within the system as well if we needed them. So for example, we saw things like transaction revisions. So, hey, we have revision 1 versus 2 versus 3. Certain entities don't always come with that kind of out of the box with Acumatica. But if that's certainly something that you guys, hey, we have a lot of different revisions for this or for this. That's something that within the customizations, we have some latitude to build. You saw that in play today, but again, could be applied to other entities within Acumatica as well. The second one, a little bit of what I just alluded to with the response to that question there, the ability to have external entity access and approvals. So all of those components from the vendor hub to the purchase orders and documents, some of those were some custom built entities. Others were ones that lived in the system that weren't available within a portal for external access previously, but we were able to customize to essentially allow areas within Acumatica that wouldn't typically be within a portal in the portal as well. So that's an area, whether it's a vendor portal and hey, we have X, Y, and Z that we want them to see that's not in there today. We do have the latitude to essentially extend that further. Or on the flip side of that, if you've seen the native customer portal, if there's areas where, hey, we want to, display projects, for example, or contracts, whatever the case may be, that's maybe not there natively, we do have some ability to customize that further to display additional entities that don't exist kind of out of the box. The next one is the audit tracking. So obviously Acumatica does have pretty robust audit tracking throughout the system, but similar to that revisions of, hey, we want to see what the before and after was. We want that on those specific screens available via the portal. Those are other areas that we could apply to other components within the system as well, as opposed to just from a vendor portal perspective. And then the last one is kind of the custom workflows. So we saw a workflow between, an external user and an internal user, kind of outside of the realm of just traditional Acumatica or native Acumatica, from that back and forth in the custom workflow perspective, as well as the different statuses of, hey, we want it to say, buyer accepted versus vendor accepted. We have a lot of latitude, again, throughout Acumatica to customize workflows more specific to you. So a lot of things, fit really well out of the box. But if you guys have specific workflows or specific customization needs, these are often areas that our team will kind of tap into to customize those further for you. And again, the vendor portal is a pretty good example of leveraging all of these different components based on some of what we built. But we could expand that further into other areas of Acumatica. So certainly reach out if you're interested in the vendor portal. That's obviously here today. Like I had mentioned, we can tweak that further for certain customer use cases as well. And we certainly have. But if you are thinking, hey, that looks really cool, I wish we had that, on a sales order, for example, anything that you've seen today that you have questions on or interest of, is this even possible? Certainly reach out as well, because the dev team has a lot of experience, have done a lot of cool stuff. And so we're working to kind of highlight some of that further as we go through as well. Awesome. So I know you guys asked a lot of good questions in the chat. So any other lasting questions as we're wrapping up?
We do have one that just came in, Kaylee, and this attendee is asking, can invoices be added?
Yeah, yep. So depends a little bit on are we talking the vendor portal or the customer portal? But that would be a common example of, hey, we want, an additional entity visible within a portal instance. So certainly we could work through what that could look like. Should they have view only access? Should they have edit access? What that would look like as well. So that would be certainly a use case that we could enhance further.
And then one additional follow-up question to that is, can they submit invoices?
Yep, same thing. So we'd want to work through kind of the exact use case there. But we would be able to configure from like a role perspective of, hey, are they just viewing things like invoices? Can they make changes or submit them as well? So yeah, would want to work through that a little bit more with you, but that would again be a common example of an area that we could tweak further for your specific use cases. Awesome. I like the ideas. You guys are giving us a lot to think about. All right, perfect. If you have any more questions, keep them coming. We'll address those, but a couple of next steps as we're starting to wrap up here. So you'll have access to our website. You can see some of the work we've done there, some additional details and blogs as well. If you're interested in what you saw today, whether it's from a vendor portal perspective and you want to start to leverage that for your guys' Acumatica instance specifically, or other areas of customization that sparked some thoughts and you want to reach out to us, certainly do reach out to myself, Austin, or Julia, or those emails on the bottom there, and we can route those appropriately as well. A couple of things in terms of staying connected. So we are putting out a new SVA newsletter specifically for Acumatica customers. You'll see that the first one's getting wrapped up pretty quickly here, so you'll see that in the next couple of weeks. But that's going to contain things like, Acumatica updates, certain industry updates of, hey, we're hearing this in these industries. How does that affect you? What do you need to be aware of there? A lot around the AI use cases and security, some Q&A, all of those types of things. So be on the lookout for those. If you're not receiving those as they come out, let us know and we can get you added to that list as well. The next webinar is going to be July 15th at 11 a.m. Feel free to scan that QR code and sign up. That one's going to be a little bit more technical around no-code, low-code customizations. So we're not going to play the role of the developers in that one, but we'll play a little bit more of a technical role of how can we start to set up, custom fields, user-defined fields, attributes, edit generic inquiries, edit dashboards, all of those types of things. So if you guys are interested in that, definitely scan the QR code and sign up. And then you can keep staying connected to us. So all of the webinars that we'll do, those are posted on our YouTube channel. So you can go ahead and view those within our website or within YouTube specifically. There's a lot of fun ideas floating around in the Acumatica community as well. So feel free to check that out. Go ahead and contribute to it. And then we had highlighted this last time as well, but we're also doing a Designed for Humans blog, which is going to be all things kind of AI related to Acumatica as well. So be on the lookout for some of those. If you can't find any of those, reach out to myself, Austin, or our support team, and we'll get you guys connected to those. But I don't see any other questions in the chat for now. So appreciate you guys hopping on and looking forward to seeing you guys next month. All right, thank you.